Hi, in this episode, we're discussing the impact of AI on startups and professional services. We're joined by Mike Smith. Mike is a management consultant at EY and also a venture capitalist at Scrappy Capital. Hi, Mike, and welcome to AI Impacts.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, Mike, I think we should jump in first. A lot of our guests are in the kind of sales, marketing, go-to-market space. And I think your sort of expertise falls a little bit in parallel to that, but perhaps outside of it in kind of the management consultant, venture capitalist space. So before we jump into kind of the tools and stuff that you're using and how you feel about all the workflows that have been changed, could you give us a little bit of a sense of like what your day-to-day is and what some of the things and tasks that are being offset by AI are starting to come into play?
Sure, absolutely. So usually I describe myself as a management consultant by day and a venture capitalist by night. And what does that mean tactically? So on the management consulting side, I work mostly on what we call transformations, which are either an acquisition, bank buys bank, insurer buys insurer. I tend to be focused on financial services, so banks, insurance companies, wealth and asset managers. And then I have a small venture fund that I invest through nights and weekends. We look at emerging industries, so distribution, logistics, media, and then what I call the future of work, which is human capital management, HR, really anything that enables where work is going to be in, let's say, 10 years. So that's why the whole AI craze is super interesting to me.
That feels like a good place to dive in. What you're describing as the future of work and then wrapping in HR is not something that people normally hear. So can you kind of give me a sense of where that line of thinking is and how AI is, I'm assuming, impacting that at some point soon?
Sure. I think, like anything else, there's a bunch of layers to this. So, layer one is just the work tools. Let's talk about one of the big things I've been tracking for the last few years. And George, you're a good example of this. Is I think we're moving away from W-2 employment. I don't think it's going to go away. But if you look at the numbers across the economy, we're seeing less employment, more contractor work. Some of that is driven by benefits, some of that is driven by comp, but it's challenging for a company to have an employee. Benefits, healthcare, salary, all these things. So if you see that's changing a lot in all industries, not just one, what does that mean? Well, I'm not self-employed, but if I was, I'd need payroll, I'd need a website, I'd need finance, I need to bill clients. So this whole suite of tools are being built to enable people to be one-person shops. And that's before AI started kicking off. That was important. And now, if you can be a one-person shop plus AI, there's limitless potential for things you can do.
Yeah. I mean, I think, is there a part, or a sort of through line in when you're working with some of these, some of your clients, right, in this sort of transformation space, where they're actively considering, replacing a human-led job with an AI workflow? Or, I mean, is it kind of getting to that point?
I personally don't see that. Some of that might be that in acquisitions, you're not generally doing new fancy technology. You're just trying to duct tape the two things together and make sure they work. But I think one of the things you notice, and I have a really interesting lens on this because by day, billion-dollar companies, biggest companies in the world. I've worked with big logos, super impressive companies, and then startups. No one's heard of any of these companies. So I get to see both sides of the ecosystem. And one of the things you notice is startups and small companies want to be big companies. They want to act like the Googles, the Facebooks, the EYs, the Deloittes. Big companies want to be innovative. So what does that mean? It means that these large companies really want to adopt new technologies, but it's a struggle because one of the things I didn't realize that would be such a struggle with adopting new technologies was the compliance layer of it. So let's talk about consulting. My firm, and I would assume most other firms, don't let you just use ChatGPT, Claude, things like that, because there's a data privacy concern for our information and for the client information. No client would be happy if I just shoved all of their information into ChatGPT and was like, figure this out for me. That's probably in 2024 the correct move, because if I shove some stuff into an LLM, I have no control over it. I don't know where it's going. So I think the way that big organizations tend to look at these things first is from a risk profile. These tools are cool, they're fancy, they're exciting, but I can't risk my information going somewhere where I don't control it. So that's generally the first lens, which is why I don't see AI is taking our jobs happening so quickly. I think the first layer is AI augments jobs.
And is
So in
that,
terms of your
go for it.
own personal tool use when you're doing like the brainstorming, etc., would that just be like a chat GPT and then just on your own personal device without providing it any specific contextual information, or not very like nothing particularly sensitive?
We don't put anything client sensitive into the tool, and the tool is not ChatGPT. It's something that EY has made. I don't know the technology behind it, but it's I've used ChatGPT in my personal life. It functions the same Q&A dialogue thing.
Sure.
And then the other piece, which is an interesting layer of this, is client computer, EY computer, personal computer, client data. I would never put client data into any of these tools, but I can't even get it into our tool because they're on separate systems. So part of it is the way that I kind of approach things is my job right now is to build a plan for integrating a portfolio of bank loans. I cannot say LLM figure this out, but I can put in to our version of ChatGPT, how would I think about building a plan for integration of bank loans? What are the risks?
Abstracted version.
What are an abstracted thing? And that whether the client is bank A, B, C, D, or B, like it's a good starting point to help me think about, oh, I didn't think about that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we've had a through line in a lot of the conversations we've had about sort of a creative partner or sort of a business partner that these LLMs or these chatbots more than LLMs can actually assist you in the abstract or guide you in the right direction without giving you the answer. So fascinating to hear that even at like the scale of Fortune 500, that's something too.
Quite often as well, we find that it's not even necessarily that they give you the answers that you really want. It's that they stimulate thought patterns and sort of, lateral thinking, which thinks, oh, okay, that's not quite what I was thinking. But actually, how about I might use this idea instead, or it leads you to another place. So it's just that, like you said, that brainstorming or thought showers, I think we're supposed to call them now. I think. Yeah, it's that ability to generate ideas quickly.
Yeah. So I'm curious about some of the negative impacts that you've experienced with these, whether it's at the sort of management consultant scale or at the work you're doing with startups. Like, where do you see the downsides in working with these tools?
I think starting on the startup side, I don't know if it's a downside, but I think one of the first considerations is the AIification of everything. Every single technology ad I see now is we use AI to do X, Y, Z, which is fine. But AI means a bunch of different things to different companies. A website builder uses AI. I mean, you can make the argument that a WYSIWYG editor is AI before AI became a big thing. But I think it's hard to understand what is truly world-breaking AI future model on the frontier versus, oh, you have like an automation. So I think teasing that out is really hard because I get a fair amount of companies across my desk that we use some LLM, and I'm like, I can't tell if you've built some really proprietary AI model that's going to change the world, or you have a pretty design wrapper on ChatGPT. And there's value in the design layer. Like there's a lot of tools that just make a better interface for ChatGPT or Claude. And one of the things we've noticed about computing is the design layer matters. You know this. As 20, 30 years ago, it was you're writing something in a command line and it just needs to work. But now, before I can even determine if it's going to work, I have to see if it's design friendly. So on the startup side, figuring out what's actually AI versus, air quotes AI is a big thing. And then on the larger side, I'm thinking about drawbacks. I think hallucinations are not the biggest concern, but something to be mindful of. I mean, I would never send something out the door without giving it a review. I think it's really good for a rough draft. But in this world where we're being paid as a consultant quite handsomely for our expertise in the area, it becomes risky if I pull something from ChatGPT and it says, this statement is fact, and then you send it out the door. So I think proofreading becomes more important. Stress testing things becomes more important.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
we've
think
heard that
both
a
of
lot.
those, yeah, yeah, and I think both of those things go hand in hand, right? Like even the tool that we use now for this podcast is Riverside, and they offer like, we'll make this AI episode for you or whatever. And as it turns out, like it does, but it's like by definition, but it's not nearly the episode that we want, or the decisions that it's making, or the limitations that have been put on it make it such that it's like, I feel like you're trying to sell me this AI tool, but in reality, it's a feature that I can run a handful of times in these like very, succinct small areas. I'm just curious, like with some of the startups that you've seen, what's the kind of level of that? Like a lot of them, do they feel like more like they're features that are trying to build on top of something? Or, like how do you even get into understanding whether or not there's any reality to the growth around some of these tools?
Oh man, that's hard because I'm not an AI expert. I'm not an LLM developer. But I think an important point that you just mentioned, and I think a lot about this for crypto. I think the smart companies use AI or crypto as a thing that enables a bigger business process. The top line sentence is not, if I see the top line sentence as, we do AI, we do crypto, I'm like, cool, that's a buzzword. I have no idea what that means. But for example, one of the companies we've invested in is a company called Credenza. They do blockchain technology for ticketing. But their top line sentence is not blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. It's not, look at us, we're doing blockchain. Because I think it's hard to sell an outcome around AI. Sorry, AI and blockchain are not outcomes. They are functions, they are processes. So you can't go into a sales situation and scream, AI, AI, crypto, 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 because what are those things leading to? So his sales pitch is, we manage your data better across the different silos that exist. That's what gets the customer to buy, not rah-rah AI, because any rational buyer wants to solve a problem. So whether it is 100 people in the Philippines doing the work behind the scenes, or it's AI, the customer doesn't really care. They want the solution. So I think the thing that I look for first is, what is the solution you're selling? Because I don't really care how the sausage gets made. I don't think most people do. And if you're selling first with AI, 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 blockchain, blockchain, you've obfuscated what the actual solution is.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
it's a
Dean and
tool.
I have,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say we have a background in blockchain. It's actually how we met, and I think that was a big common through line of what we would talk about in our
100%.
marketing conversations. Is like we're talking about. It's as if we're selling tractors, but we're only talking about like piston technology on the shock absorbers or something. Like it's this function that people sort of have elevated as like a means of community in a weird way.
And are you even selling a tractor, or you're selling the fact that the fields are being plowed? Because
I
I don't
think,
care about the tractor, right?
it's
Yeah.
true. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, and I suspect that that's happening quite a bit with a lot of this sort of AI wash. The same thing happened with the sustainability movement 10 years ago. Like everything was a greenwash of,
And I
all
would
these
say as well with
certifications.
AI, another thing that's it's as we touched on this earlier, it's the definition of AI. What does AI even mean, right? Because I'll speak to like old school guys or whatever, a couple of my customers, and they're like, well, that's not AI. That's clearly not AI. It's just some sort of machine learning, some sort of whatever else. That's not AI. AI should be. They have this expectation of what AI is, which is like HAL or something like that.
Right.
Whereas you've got other people at the other end of the scale, which, like you say, confuse or conflate automation and AI, which is really, really, not AI at all. But then there's this sort of melting pot in the middle of what do we currently mean by AI? Is that definition fixed? Is that definition going to evolve over time?
Right. I mean, it definitely seems like the term itself is used as like the forefront of whatever the current artificial intelligence technology is, right? Like 6 years ago, it was machine learning, and AI companies were only talking about how they have machine learning. And that was the forefront. Now it seems like it's moving towards this LLM status, right? Like if your system is not backed by some sort of LLM that can spit out sentences and communicate with you, then maybe it's not actually AI at the moment, but who knows where that's going to go, right? Quantum could end up in there. I mean, there's loads of trajectories.
I'm sure I saw an AI-powered toothbrush, or I saw something that was talking about an AI-powered toothbrush. It's like, when like cars first started getting turbos, right? And then everything became turbo. Like you get a turbo like hairdryer, and you get a turbo, I don't know, whatever it might be, microwave, I don't know. But like
Oh,
everything has turbo in the tech, and it's the same with AI now. It's just
yeah.
becoming like a label.
That's actually a
to try
really
and
good
sell.
analogy because it was, building onto an older tech, right? You have like this combustion engine, you're trying to get more efficiency out of it by adding this piece to it. And it feels like it's not too different than a lot of the tools now. Like you have a word processor and now there's this thing that makes it more fast or efficient or suggestive or whatever it is. But fundamentally the product is still the same. But anyway, good tangent. So I think I would love to jump into a little more detail about some of the kind of day-to-day pieces of these tools that you're using.
Sure.
I think more on the startup side is where I'm kind of really curious. Like when you're going into conversations with some of the founders or some of the technologists at these companies, like what are the conversations around when it comes to implementing AI? Is it more high level, like this is the outcome, or does it always end up sort of down in the weeds?
Well, I think the one thing, one second. I think the conversation it goes back to being outcomes driven. So these big companies and small companies want to implement AI, right? They want to have a use case, but I think the challenge is finding the use case first. So I think one of the things I've noticed over the years is you start with the use case first. And you say, what are you trying to do here? Because you don't always need AI. But I think the other piece of it is that a lot of folks end up getting shiny object syndrome here with AI. Something I know the technology is powerful. I know it can do all these things. I know I have these conversations with myself and other knowledge workers. Figuring out how it fits in is so hard to do because so much of what we're doing as knowledge workers is not repeatable stuff. So I know that AI can schedule my tweets and my LinkedIn posts for me. Cool. That's saving me a small amount of time.
Yeah.
I know that it can, whenever I play with Mid-Journey, I have Albert Einstein riding an elephant. Cool. Great. I'm not a content marketer, so it's less valuable. I think the more you get away from consumer facing, the harder it is to integrate it into different use cases.
Why do you think that is? Like, what's the big roadblock there?
Is it that the solutions don't necessarily exist? Is it the solutions aren't robust? Is it that they require too much, customization, manual intervention that actually makes it redundant?
I think that is a big piece of it, the customization and the manual intervention. I would love a perfect world for me is I put my work into an LLM. It does everything. I walk away. I come back and I pick up my paycheck. Like that's ideal, right? But that happening is so far away because I think of it a lot like an intern. I want to grow and coach people. I want to give intern work. But years ago, I had an intern who was a great person, but I spent so much time training them up that by the time they were gone, like I spent so much time into developing them that my work fell behind. So I think the same is true with AI, that I would love to shove all my stuff into AI, do no work, get a paycheck. But it would take me so long to oversee it. And the same is true of hiring virtual assistants. The onboarding to these tools and the management is really, really challenging. And then you add on the privacy layer.
Yeah.
Again, I wouldn't put client data into a thing, but I can't. So that's an option. 2, training it and telling it what to do. I think it's kind of like navigating. It's not really hard to get on the road and drive. It is hard to figure out where you're going in a world where you don't have Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of, as George mentioned, in terms of the I guess the tactics that you sort of do use or recommend or see effectively used within startups, is there anything sort of that is that you see any commonalities, anything that you would recommend, and you say, look, you might want to just do X, Y, or Z, just use this like AI solution to give you that little bit of a boost, as opposed to it being a fundamental change? But is there something that you would say as a commonality that you'd say you might want to use this?
For me, like a very low lift thing is changing the tone of things. I find myself in consulting, we're always putting out fires, and even in startup land, I tend to be a little brusque with like, let's get to business. It's helped me be a team player, rah, write a better version of it, be more coaching. It's nice to help with tone when sometimes I'm just like, here's the exact thing I want to do. I don't care about anything else. It helps me celebrate our team, have a better narrative. So it's really good. And then something my fiance put me onto is like asking it to ask me questions back to challenge my thinking. To saying, build a marketing plan and ask me questions to clarify my thinking. Because then it pushes me, I push back and back and forth.
That's interesting. We've heard that before. Certainly around challenging salespeople's assumptions on their personas that they're trying to sell to. So I think this about a certain persona, AI. Like, is that correct? Is that how a persona would react? Have I got this correct, or should I think about them in a different way?
Yeah. The personas is super interesting because, again, from the consulting lens, we tend to parachute into these situations where we have, like, I believe consultants fundamentally get paid to move the ball forward. In the last 3 years, I've been put into bank integration, software transformations, backup planning, process optimization, automation, like all of these things that I'm a pretty good business person, but I had slim to no knowledge before jumping in. This current engagement I've been on for 6-7 months is the first time I've been able to use an LLM to get me up to speed on knowledge versus Google. And is there a huge difference? I mean, I think I'm getting to speed faster because I think it does a better job of summarizing. And I can say, what are the 3 key things to know about backing up bank software? With Google, it's like, here's an article, SEO, clickbait stuff. I think it gets to the heart of stuff better.
Yeah, and I use since the episode we had with Stephanie a few weeks ago, I've been using Perplexity AI for exactly that purpose instead of using Google. If I've ever got any questions to ask which require, which I'm not just looking for a specific website. If I want an answer and I want a summarized answer, then Perplexity for me is just a fantastic tool because it also gives you the sources. It says, look, it mentions the sources it's pulled from, it summarizes it, it suggests follow-up questions that will allow you to dig deeper into the subject, if you like. And for those sort of questions, I will never use Google again, or at least not standard Google, because it's so limited.
Yeah, totally. There's a tool that I've been using as well with Arc browser. They have a mobile version
Arc.
called Arc is great, and they have this Arc search. And by the way, just as an aside, like what a fantastic way to integrate AI tools. Like the first way that they did their voice assistant was that you pick up the phone and call it. Or if you're asking a question, it will call you and it looks like a call coming in on your iPhone. You can like talk to the thing, which is great.
Oh, that's clever.
But it's very clever. But it also does this sort of Perplexity style kind of readout, but in more Gen Z. It has like emojis and like call outs and things all the way down.
Yeet, cat, bussin'. This information
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, it's interesting because it cites it all. And to your point, Dean, like it's perfect for a question that's, I need to explain a quick scenario and then I have a question about it, right? So like I have these ducks that are always doing random stuff. And so I'm like, I have these 4 ducks of this type and one of them is doing this, like what's going on? And it will give me a cited piece of information where if I was doing that on Google, right, I'd have to read through someone's blog about how much they love their ducks and so on to see if they even have this problem and all that. And I'd be fed ads and,
and you'd end up trolling forums, and going through and it becomes a nightmare.
Right. Completely. Yeah, cool. So I have one other question for you, Mike. So I think you have a unique perspective in the sense that you're in these sort of 2 different scales of companies, right? Given all of the kind of trajectory that you've had since we met 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was, to kind of now in the development that's happened in AI, what's a piece of advice do you have for someone who wants to get into either of the 2 types of roles that you found yourself in?
I believe that AI is not going to take away everyone's jobs. I think the people who will lose jobs to AI, they're going to lose. Let me say this. AI is not going to take away jobs, or it will, small amounts. people who know how to use AI will take away jobs from people who don't know how to use AI. And I think that's the thing I've been thinking a lot about is I've really struggled to weave AI into my workflows. It's messy. I can send the email or I can draft the email in ChatGPT and then send the email. And then extra step always makes things harder. So I think the guidance is figure out how to use these tools, even at a very, very basic level. You don't need to have it generate code and build a startup and then run a server and all these like really complex ChatGPT things or LM things. Have it draft an email. Have it write some blog posts. Generate an Instagram post. I think the mistake that I've made with outsourcing things to team members or VAs is starting with, what's my biggest problem? Like right now I'm planning a wedding. I'm not going to outsource my wedding planning to ChatGPT.
Because comparison.
But that's a big, hairy thing that takes 30, 40, 50, 100 hours. It's unrealistic to take your biggest problem and outsource it to AI, an intern, a VA. The lowest hanging fruit is I'm not posting enough on LinkedIn. I can have someone draft LinkedIn posts. So find the minimal thing that you can experiment with and then expose yourself to as many tools as possible. I'm in the middle of this 100 days of AI course. It's free. It's really nice. And what I like is that it's a bite-sized email every day. I'm sometimes a entrepreneur in the sense that I buy these courses and I'm like, I'm going to study this new technology from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Like, I have so many courses I bought and I haven't followed through because I don't have 4 hours in a day.
Right.
But I have 30 minutes to get a link, go, oh, this is what Claude does. Oh, this is a new tool. Like just getting more reps and exposure to tools, I think is important.
Yeah,
really
I think that's such great advice. I think it's just get started with it, right? Just do something simple with it. Like this is what I'll say to a lot of people who I know outside of this space is who they talk to me about AI and they don't really understand it. I'm like, just go to ChatGPT, go to the website, go to Perplexity, ask it questions, see what comes back, and there you go. You've started using AI. Then take it on the next steps. Find something that you're struggling with and try and see if it can help. You never know. It's just familiarization.
It's so uncomfortable to force yourself to do that. Like, truly.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, especially when the thing is like spitting out something that you weren't expecting. Like I found playing with other tools, I'm expecting some certain outcome, but when I feel like I'm like, I don't know, it literally is like I'm asking someone else to do this thing for me and then I have to review it. It feels almost unnatural, but in any event, Mike, it has been great having you on the show. Really glad that you were able to come on. For folks that would like to follow you online, where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm embarrassed to let you know I know my LinkedIn URL, which is linkedin.in/MASmith1. But you can find me on Twitter, Mr. Mike Smith. You can find me on Instagram, SmithPics. And I look forward to connecting.
Cool. Dean, any final words for the band?
No, that was really, really great show. Thanks very much. It was very insightful.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. All right. I'll read us out. Thanks so much for listening to or watching the AI Impacts podcast. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to send us a note, play with our chatbot, which works sometimes, head over to aiimpacts.show. Otherwise, you can follow us on LinkedIn and all the other social platforms. Thanks so much.
Cheers, everyone.